Hi, my name is Nairi and I'm running an adoption support channel. I have two adopted boys myself and they are siblings, and today we're going to talk about the codependence of siblings. So if you're thinking of adopting siblings, this will be really useful to you. If you already have siblings, I'm sure you'll be able to identify some of the things that I am telling you about them. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't joined my growing community on YouTube, if you want to know more about adoption. So let me chat to you about how this situation works with the two boys that I have who are brothers. They are now 11 and 12, but we've known them from when they were toddlers, so 2 and 3. They were foster children then. They went away for adoption, came back, and then we adopted them. So we have, if you like, the history there, the story of their lives. We know them really well and we know what their patterns are. So the first thing to say about the hint that they would be very codependent on each other, when they had their story stem work, which is a psychology assessment, and they were given lots of scenarios about where things went wrong. So let me give you an example of that. If the family lost the car keys, they were given this scenario, they were given some visuals to work with. Psychologists came back to me and said it was totally remarkable. With every situation they were given where something went wrong, they never included an adult to be the resolve for that situation. They thought about how others could help, but never adults. And that is the story of my boys. They very, very rarely come to us for help over anything. That doesn't mean to say they don't come to us for what they want, but they don't come to us to resolve a lot of their issues. They're a lot better now. They are a lot better now. So I'm going to give you some examples of how it works with them in everyday life. So this is really recent. So we've just had Halloween. We don't actually celebrate Halloween per se, but we've just had Halloween, and so we allowed them to pop down the shop, which is really local, and bearing in mind they're 11 and 12, they walk to school on their own, and to go and get some sweets just as treats because we weren't sending them out on the streets. And then we said you can come back with the sweets and then you can go out and just have a quick walk around, see what's going on, and come home again. Before this has happened as well, is the little one, I call him the little one, he's 11, had already been kind of stalking around to see what he could see outside, and he was trying to get his brother involved in this, and his brother didn't want to get involved in this, but that's what he was trying to do. So they went down to the shop together. Now, bearing in mind that as they left the house, I said, these were my exact words, make sure your older brother chooses what he wants to choose and you choose what you want to choose, because we have a family dynamic where the older one is very sensitive, quiet, easily led, a really lovely spirited boy, but will just follow. So the danger of that, of course, is that he never gets to do what he wants to do, and that I find that quite sad. So I said, just get what each one of you want. You've got the same money, get what each one of you want. So you guessed it, they came back with exactly the same. And I knew they would, because they're just codependent. So one of them, who is the stronger personality, says, oh, this is a good idea, this is what you need to get, this is a really good choice. And the other one goes, yeah, it's a good choice because you're my brother and we do everything together. So if you say it's a good choice, it's a good choice. So that's an example. A silly one, but it's an example. Let me give you some other examples, which possibly not as good in a way. Like if there is something that they want to do together that they know that we would not be happy with, then this is where I find this really difficult. They will work it out together in quite detailed plans. Now I know that because my adult children, so I've got 5 adult children, I was talking to them about this, and one of them that I perceived to be one of the more sensible ones said, yes mum, but every child does that when they're younger. Every child tries to get away with things when they're younger. And I was thinking about this really long and hard. Yes, they do, but they don't necessarily seek each other out to do it. So I can think of examples with my adult children trying to get away with things, but it was what they choose to do on their own. They didn't necessarily involve their siblings. In fact, most of the time they didn't, because they wanted to keep it quiet. Yes, I'll give you some examples of where they've they've worked together to do something that they know is not right, but because they're codependent, then what one does, the other does. And I'm saying that it's always the little one that leads, because generally it is, but actually sometimes if the older one wants to do something that he's not too sure about and the little one doesn't really want to do it, even the older one can persuade him to join him in his quest, because it's like they treat each other as mini adults. If push came to shove, they would definitely listen to each other above Tim and I. Now that might be because we're dinosaurs, and it might be because they don't agree with what we say and they don't want to do what we want, but I don't think it is that. I think it's that history of survival together, and this is what you may find with your sibling group, that they've looked out for each other. Now I know with my boys that they would have looked out for each other for whatever food they could have found from wherever they could have found it. They would have looked out for each other to try and keep each other safe and know when the other one's being hurt. So they have this instinct that they need to protect each other, and that's where it stems from. And you may find the same with your siblings, and it's something that is kind of lovely but also very sad. And at times I think it's really important to try and work on that, to try and remind them that actually their sibling is not the one ultimately that's going to protect them, even though in the past that might be the case. But in a new adoptive home, that's not the case. It's not how it should be. An example of what they've done, they've come in here before and I had some sweets in a jar which were just for them actually, and often if they came in here, because this is my office, this is my private space, I would encourage them to sit with me and do a little bit of creative stuff, and we would enjoy some of those sweets together. So it's not that I'm withholding those sweets from them at all. When one of my adult children came to visit me one evening, the little one came in and took the sweets, which I know is not massive, and he came in here and he took one for himself and he took one for his brother. I worked it out because he's trying to brush his teeth. Actually, yes, so they haven't brushed their teeth. He's trying to brush his teeth with a mint in his mouth, which was very awkward. And then obviously when I gave him a kiss goodnight, the minty smell was definitely not toothpaste smell. So I worked it out. So then I said to him, does your brother know? Does your brother know what you've done? No. Really good at lying. No, he doesn't know. Okay, so your brother doesn't have one then? No. I found that really hard to believe, because I know the patterns. I know that if they generally, when they're quiet, they're generally doing something together, which can feel a little bit uncomfortable and sinister. So I went into the bedroom to see the other one and I said, do you know about this? And he's not so good at kind of covering things up, but he'd put the sweet behind the clock and went, oh, he gave me one of these. And he tried to make out that he gave me one, but I'm not going to eat it. And then I picked the sweet up and it was wet. So I'd been had, man. I had been had. I'd been made to look an absolute idiot. And I was really upset about it, which, I don't know, maybe you think that's odd to get upset about it. But I was, because it's the way that they contrive together. So that's the negative side about it, I guess. I mean, the sweet thing about it is that they're never ever gonna kind of leave each other. I feel that even if as they get into adulthood they meet other partners and things, I do think that my boys will always be there for each other. They love my biological children who are adults. They love them so much, especially my son, who is the youngest of my biological children and is 23. I have to think about that. Oh my goodness, they love him so much. They want to do stuff with him all the time when he comes to stay with us with his wife. But there's something about that bond between those two which will never ever be broken. And partly, I guess, their memory, subconscious memory, I think for the little one, of having to survive together, it kicks in massively. I guess the thing for you to kind of work out in your mind is how much do you want them to protect each other and be there for each other, which is a huge comfort, and how much do you want to help them to be independent of each other. Tries we have over the years where we've said consistently, you don't need to do what the other one's doing, you don't need to go where the other one's going. As they're getting older, obviously we've tried to be a lot firmer. if I'm really honest, the default will always be to be together. And I'm not too sure now whether I want to do much more work around it. We've worked kind of therapeutically with them in lots of ways. We've shown them why they need to have their own thought processes and their own independence. We've tried to explain to them why adults are the ones who protect them. And I think deep down they do know that, but their lived experience in those early days is not that. The adults were not there for them. They did not provide for them in any way. They didn't provide physically, emotionally, in any way. And so they needed each other. And so I think it is a wrestling match as to whether you want to try to continuously work on that or get to a point where you feel like you've done enough work on it and it is what it is. I just want to give you a final example of the fact that even though I've done all this work with them, it's still not going to be the adult in the end. When we were having issues with my older son, particularly at night time, and we always talk about windows and doors. They hate having the curtains open at night. They think people can see them. They still have that fear around windows and doors. I think it might always be there. When I was talking to my older son about this and said, who do you feel safe with? He started with the dog. So he would rather sleep in a room with the dog if he had the choice. I mean, he's very animal led, he's very animal driven. I understand that, and he has, he does have some limited understanding in things, but I don't think it's that. The next thing personally mentioned was his brother. Then he mentioned, I think it was my husband or me, and then me. So basically that was the order. I know that if they wanted to go straight back into that moment where it's just them against the world, that's what they would do. So when you think about adopting, if you haven't adopted siblings yet, this is something that you're going to see happen over and over again and kind of need to be aware of. But it can still work in your favour in the sense that if it goes well and they're working together well and they're playing together well, then obviously they do have each other. And that's the difference between adopting a child on their own and adopting siblings. A child on their own doesn't have that to call on. It might be that their siblings are living elsewhere, and so they have to make an attachment with you, which is brilliant, but they also don't have that reserve. They don't have that other person to call on. They don't have that comfort from their past and from their history. So in many ways, having that comfort from their history, having someone who's lived that shared experience is a great positive as well. I mean, you may know if you're an adult that's a little bit older that it's sometimes nice to go back and reflect with family members about history and memories that have been made that other more recent friends and family members don't know about. And I think for the boys, that's a thing, that they have that shared lived experience, and so that can still be a positive resilience factor in their lives. Hope you've enjoyed that. I know it's a little bit longer, a little bit more chatty. There's lots of videos on my channel for you to check out. So if you're looking for more information on siblings, there are videos on there about siblings within the age choice playlist. You might find that really interesting. So thanks for watching.